Hello everyone, I am Charles Van Meter, and welcome to yet another Versus video here at StarCityGames.com.
Yes, CVM here with BBD, freshly back from, I think he did pretty well at a tournament this last weekend.
Yeah, like I ran average, played average, just kind of, yeah. All right, maybe I ran hotter than like Heliod himself, but yep.
So yeah, we have a BBD back. He was gone the last 2 weeks, first the Pro Tour, and then catching back from the Pro Tour, got to play in the Grand Prix this weekend, and just very, very easily crushed all of Louisville with this deck.
Yeah, mono black. So basically, I came back from the Pro Tour. I played junk at the Pro Tour, and I was looking at a deck I wanted to play for the GP, and I knew I wanted to play Thoughtseize and Hero's Downfall. They really just seemed like the two best cards in the format, in my opinion.
Definitely close.
Definitely up there, yeah.
I think that they're the two best black cards, 100%. But they're definitely close to just being hands down the best cards.
I mean, I think Packrat has something to say about that. So, actually,
sure.
No, he doesn't. He's a rat. He doesn't.
The rats don't talk.
Yeah, but basically, I decided that I wanted to play Thoughtseize, I wanted to play Hero's Downfall, and I figured mono black would probably be a good starting point to test. Mm-hmm. There was the list that won, or that top 8'd the Pro Tour, the mono black list. So I was like, I'll just start with this. And then like 20 matches later, I'd only lost twice. And it felt like I was just so far ahead against every single opponent I was playing that I really just felt like this deck was just by far the best deck in the format, and it seemed like people weren't really catching on. So I was pretty excited going into the Grand Prix. I actually felt pretty confident that I was going to do well. My expectation was actually just to top 8 it, and was very happy, obviously, that happened. But
for sure, basically,
the only changes I really made from that deck were Night Veil Spectre ended up just being a lot better against the metagame than Lifebane Zombie, and I thought that people might be playing this deck. Or at the very least, like some of the Orzhov decks, or like some of the like Esper control decks and stuff. And Night Veil Spectre was just kind of better in general. Plus, it's actually just very good against the mono blue deck.
Yeah.
Especially with like the 2 Temple Deceits and like some of their best cards like Thassa and Master of Waves only costing a single mana. You actually
Cyclonic Rift.
And Cyclonic Rift too. You can actually cast a lot of their cards.
For sure.
Yeah.
As well as you can just like steal lands from them, and it's not even just the mono blue deck that the card's very good against. There are very few removal spells that hit it in the format, so it's good against. Honestly, I just think any control or mid-range deck. I think it's just a very good card.
Yeah, like Ultimate Price and Doomblade both miss it, which are kind of two of the more popular removal spells right now.
Yep, and they have like Hero's Downfall is like really the only effective removal spell that they can hit it, and there are lots of other great targets for it, and sometimes they just don't have it, and you get to play your opponent's spells. Yep,
and Night Veil is also respectable against like the mono red decks, blocks Burning Trees, Fire Fist Strikers when they don't have 3 creatures, blocks like Ash Zealot, Mutavault, etc. So it's actually pretty good all around.
He's also pretty devoted to Erebos as well.
He is, yeah. He's also devoted to Thassa, but we will not talk about that. He's a traitor. We won't get into that. But yeah, other than that, like this is pretty much like the PT top 8 list. There's nothing like the general like idea of the deck is you want to chain the infinite removal spells this deck has to basically like kill everything your opponent plays and use Underworld Connections to keep like the fuel going. That makes like Underworld Connections is just the best card in the deck. It's pretty much the engine that makes this deck viable. Other than that, we just have like some Whip of Erebos and Erebos. Erebos is kind of like a 5th Underworld Connections, but he also can just sometimes be
an indestructible 5/7 creature.
An indestructible 5/7 creature, and his ability to prevent your opponent from gaining life is actually extremely relevant against a lot of decks. When cards like Whip of Erebos in their format or Blood Baron, those can be very difficult for this deck to beat, but Erebos like really mitigates like the effect that they can have in the game. And then Grey Merchant is just like a great top-end finisher. It's basically, it's kind of like the love child of Corrupt and Obsidian. It just kind of feels like that, yeah.
I mean, Erebos even shuts off opponents' Grey Merchants if you happen to play in the mirror, which is pretty sweet because like your you're in this battle where you're using your life to get ahead with like Thoughtseize and Underworld connections, and then Grey Merchant to get you back up when you need it, and Erebos just stops that completely.
Well,
and suddenly you're just able to put pressure on them.
I mean, they do still get to drain you, but they don't get to gain the life from it.
Yeah.
So like they can still kill you with the Grey Merchant, but they can't like use it as a buffer tool to like stay alive as well.
Yeah.
And then Pack Rat's kind of like an interesting thing. I actually had a deck with Pack Rat. I actually had a deck that looked a lot like this early on in testing for the Pro Tour.
I think we were just honestly a handful of cards off.
We were about 5 cards off, yeah. Unfortunately, didn't stick with that deck, but we did have Pack Rat in there, and as CVM can attest to, some games were won by turn 2 Pack Rat.
Pack it in.
Yeah.
Just gotta pack it in.
Sometimes CVM's life total was eradicated very quickly.
Welcome back, BBD.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
And then we have a mana base here of Mutavaults and Temple of Deceits. The only difference between the list that I played and Todd and Brad played, Todd and Brad also top 8'd the event. In fact, there were 4 of us playing the deck. Me, Brad, and Todd all top 8'd the event, and Cranderson lost his win and in. So pretty strong showing as a whole.
Yeah.
But the difference between our lists was I played a Mutavault over a Nykthos. And they think Nykthos is better, and I think Mutavault's better, and I think both cards are really good. And I'm not 100% sure, but I know that Mutavault was just very, very good for me all day. So I do like the 4th Mutavault. And there are 2 Temple of Deceits, which are basically the black Nubenalia. If you're familiar with that land, it was like a plains that scryed, came into play tapped. Basically, this is just a swamp that scries. Really, the blue doesn't matter except in situations where Night Veil Specter's involved. And that actually does come up sometimes. But yeah, this is the deck and basically what it's trying to do. And let's talk, I guess, a little bit about the sideboard and see what options we have there. All right, we are back with the sideboard. To begin, we have 3 Duresses, including a Ruben Bressler signed copy from when I punted an on-camera match at SCG Cincinnati.
Duress only targets your opponents, folks.
Only targets the opponents.
Remember that.
Yep. Now I have it immortalized on this Duress. So.
In beautiful pink crayon.
But Duress is basically here in the sideboard for all the Sphinx's Revelation decks. Against those decks, your game plan is basically like Underworld Connections. That's basically your entire game plan is to just grind them down. Thoughtseize and Duress are excellent at stealing basically the cards that interrupt that game plan. Usually you want to ignore their removal spells, like you don't care how many creatures they kill. You want to take things like Detention Spheres, counter spells, Planeswalkers, things that can actually like pressure you. My philosophy when Thoughtseizing them is always take Aetherling. It actually doesn't matter what's in their hand. You just always take Aetherling. And then beyond that, you take whatever card is going to like answer your engine, like your connections or like provide their own engine, like their Revelations or stuff like that.
Yeah, because most of those decks, they play 1 Aetherling and like 2 Elspeths to kill you.
Yep.
Outside of like a Jace Ultimate, but we have 4 Heroes Downfall for their Planeswalkers.
Yeah.
And creatures that can pressure them. Mutavault's very good at attacking Planeswalkers, so I think
yeah.
taking the Aetherling is good.
Yeah, a lot of times like they can like I played against Jack Fogel in the Grand Prix and he cast 3 massive Sphinx's Revelations and still lost. Just because he didn't have an Aetherling in his main deck, he just actually didn't have a way to kill me. So that's something that can happen if you just want to take their win conditions. We have 3 Life Banes. These are mainly for Blood Baron of Vizkopa, but it's also excellent against the red-green monster decks, the Colossal Gruul decks that are springing up and becoming very popular.
Yeah.
It strips like one of their big threats, like Apollo Kranos or an Arbor Colossus, and then it also is very good at killing Xenaghost, which is the most problematic card out of their deck. Yeah. So kind of double duty there. We have 2 more Pack Rats. Pack Rat is just the best card in the mirror match. And also against like any kind of like black-based deck that doesn't have a sweeper, Pack Rat is just the best card against them. If you can ever start populating rats, they can't pressure you enough to kill you fast enough through it. Like usually their best pressure is something like Desecration Demon, which Pack Rat just can invalidate.
Yeah. By
having enough fodder to sack to it, or just like outracing it, and then yeah, it just kind of grows beyond the range of anything they can deal with. Pithing Needle, I wished I had played a second Pithing Needle, and basically this card is majority for like the Domri Garrick decks. You basically have to deal with their planeswalkers. You have a million ways to kill their creatures. You just need ways to beat their planeswalkers, and Pithing Needle's the best. It's also good against the Sphinx's Revelation decks. Most of those decks are playing 4 Jace. I would just play a Pithing Needle on turn 1 and name Jace blind, because most of the time that's what you're going to name with it. Yeah. Another Erebos, this comes in against some of the more grindy or mid-rangey decks like the Mirror Match. It is also very good against all the Revelation decks as a 6th Underworld Connections to go with the other Erebos, and a way to prevent their Blood Barons and their Sphinx's Revelations from beating you.
Now, I also noticed, I played the green-red Colossal Devotion deck.
Yeah.
And I noticed that whenever I played against the black or the black-white deck, most of the games that I was losing would involve an Erebos. I know a lot of people said that they don't really like Erebos against those decks, but it's very tough for those decks to keep it from being a creature, which just stonewalls all of our fatties. Plus, it just allows them to, turn their life points into additional removal spells for all my creatures. So it doesn't seem like it would be very good against those types of decks, but I felt like it was the main card that was beating me.
Yeah, I actually felt like Erebos was very good when I played against the red-green decks as well, and it was actually good at killing planeswalkers too. He's conveniently big enough to kill a Xenagos, a Domri, and a Garruk, regardless of what abilities they use the first turn. And he's very hard to profitably block. If they're going into chump mode against Erebos, you're kind of winning because your goal is to just keep all creatures off the table. So if they're sacking creatures to Desecration Demon and chumping at Erebos, that's exactly what you want. Eventually you'll run them out.
Yeah.
We have a couple more removal spells here. This is just the old Morze's plan against a lot of the red-green style decks or decks like that where you...
They just got a bunch of dudes, so you just gotta
you can never have too much removal. There's no such thing. So we bring in these against those decks, and then one Dark Betrayal was basically a nod to what we thought the metagame might be, where we thought people would pick up on this deck a little bit, and they didn't. So we had Dark Betrayal for the mirror match. No one was really the only mirror matches we played were against each other, but Dark Betrayal was still good against the black-white decks and stuff. So it wasn't a complete waste, but
Obsidat is still a card.
It is. Moving forward, I still think Dark Betrayal will be it'll be a lot better moving forward now that people will pick up this deck.
It kills Pack Rat.
It does.
Well, at least a Pack Rat, for what that's worth.
I mean, it's usually worth 1 or 2 points of life. Yeah, good enough. So. But yeah, this is the mono black deck, and I love playing this deck and can't wait to do it some more.